Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be an alpha male the right way, with God at the center, made in His image, strong, dominant, and we don't apologize for it. Today's episode is one I'm excited to do. I've thought about it for a while. A young man's E.D.C, a young man's everyday carry. And thinking about this, I'm primarily thinking about a young man in school, and high school, and college, or maybe in a restricted place. Maybe stuff you'll take going to the airport, going on a trip you can have with you in an airport or a restricted place, whatever that might be. Or maybe you're just a grown man that's into everyday carry. Maybe you'll just get some cool ideas for stuff that you're not yet carrying and maybe want to consider or try carrying. Anyway, that's what today's episode is going to be about. I'm going to plug in the bio. If you want to skip it, skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ. A simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. All right, let's get this episode started with a couple of caveats. It is a commandment to honor your father and mother. They, not me, if you're a young man, have dominion over you and your life. If you are to submit to them, you shall honor your father and your mother. The next one is for parents. You're going to know your kid far better than I know your kid, obviously. You are going to know whether or not they're ready and their personality traits, what they can handle and what they can't handle, far better than me. I'm not saying that every kid out there should have this stuff. I'm saying there are options available. And I'm also coming at this from the assumption that most young men are going to be going to public school. If you homeschool your kids, awesome. Or if they go to a private school or something like that, that's great. But I still think that most young men go to public school. This even would apply to college. So if you have listened for any length of time, you'll know I'm big on everyday carry for men. If you're a young man, maybe it's time to get started into everyday carry if you're not already. Now, the number one thing that you should have with you is the Word of God. You should have that on you in some form or fashion. Because where I'm going to start with this is most kids probably have a smartphone. Most kids, you probably see them with their smartphone all the time. Most young men are probably on their smartphone a lot. You can also have the Bible on your smartphone. I'd recommend like a small E.D.C. Bible. I have one in my baby bug out bag, my bailout bag, but I also have one on my phone that's quite handy for times when I have a few minutes and I just want to read the Bible. The Bible app is really good. There's a bunch of different translations, and if you have service, it even has a mode where you can just play it and it'll read it audibly on some of the translations. I really like that for times when I'm busy. Anyway, staying on the phone topic, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with your phone. So, a couple of things you can have on there are the U.S. Army Survival Guide and the SAS Survival Guide. One costs $2, one is free. But just a cool survival guide if your kid's into that kind of stuff, Army, military kind of stuff. The U.S. Survival Guide, U.S. Army Survival Guide rather, or the SAS Survival Guide. Those are pretty cool. Another big one, I was actually out scouting around some new area in the wilderness today and I used it. And that is a compass. If you have an iPhone, I believe it comes with a compass. Not only is it a compass though, it'll show you direction of travel, cardinal direction. It even makes a little, I guess, buzz or something like that when you cross a cardinal direction, like north or south. It's pretty cool. It will also show you elevation. And something really cool, if you look at it, it will show your latitude and longitude. What's cool about that is if you're going out somewhere, you can literally take a screenshot of it and send it to somebody if you still have service. And that will tell them exactly where you are with your coordinates. Now, I know there's ways to track cell phones and stuff like that, but a lot of times that can take time. This is a good, easy way at least to let them know where you're starting your journey, your adventure, the last place you were. You can literally take a screenshot of that and send it. And it gives a GPS coordinate location. So that's really cool. And again, your kid's probably carrying a smartphone anyway, so why not have that stuff and know how to use it? I remember when I was in school, cool kids had JanSport backpacks. But whatever kind of backpack you have, it probably has a smaller pouch in the front. You might be able to use that smaller pouch for E.D.C. stuff. Maybe that's your designated E.D.C. pouch. You can kind of stand in as a bailout kit or a bug out bag. Because your kid's probably got to have a backpack, or you probably have to have a backpack anyway. So why not have one compartment of that designated for your E.D.C. stuff? Now, besides the Word of God, the two main things that I carry are a firearm, a handgun, and a knife. Those might be off the table for you in a lot of circumstances, especially again if you're in public school. But let's continue down that list. One of the other things that I carry and use a lot is a flashlight. My number one recommendation for a small handy E.D.C. flashlight is going to be a stream light. The one that I E.D.C. the most is a MicroStream, USB rechargeable. But it doesn't have to be that. You know, and or you know your children better. If they take care of stuff and aren't going to lose it, get them something nice. And even that flashlight's not super expensive. If they're not going to take care of it and or lose it or break it and they're just prone to that, get them something a little bit cheaper. The kind of person that leaves stuff everywhere and loses it, maybe go a little bit cheaper on the flashlight. But a good handy flashlight is kind of a gateway into E.D.C. for a lot of people. Even a lot of people, even if they could, they wouldn't carry a knife or a gun. They might carry a small flashlight. It comes in handy a lot. I know that your cell phone has a flashlight, but it's kind of an afterthought. It's nowhere near as good as even a cheap purpose-built flashlight. It's much better to have one. You drop some keys, you're looking for something at night, whatever the case might be, they come in handy a lot. Anyway, a small flashlight is one of the things that I carry that pretty much anybody should be able to carry. Don't go with the crazy tactical ones with the gnarled ends and all that stuff, the strike bezel, because they might consider that a weapon. They might not be permitted to have that. Honestly, a good pen or a pencil is a far better weapon anyway. But a good E.D.C. flashlight might not be a bad idea. The next one, paracord bracelets. I don't know if they're still in style. They weren't when I was a kid. I don't even think they existed. I don't even remember seeing paracord actually until I joined the military. But paracord's everywhere now, and the bracelets are pretty common. I don't think anybody would bat an eye at one. They make all kinds of cool ones. In fact, when I was out scouting today, I don't like to wear jewelry, but I put one on my belt just to have. I also carry some paracord just in my pocket because I really don't want to break into this thing unless I have to. And I do use paracord quite a bit. But if I needed a bunch of it, let's say I got stuck out today in the wilderness, twisted my ankle, and I had to make a shelter, I'd have a lot of 550 cord on hand. So they're pretty handy for that. Mine also has a whistle. So there's that. Now the one I have has a knife, so you probably couldn't have this one, but it also has a small compass on there. If you get the dirt cheapest ones from China, the compass may or may not work, but if you check it and it's a decent one, it should actually work as a compass. Make all different manners of these with all different kinds of stuff on there, but they're cheap, they're light, they're easy. Why not have one in your pack? This next thing may be controversial, and that is a ferro rod. And again, you're going to know your child, or you're going to know yourself better than me. If you're a pyromaniac or your kid's a pyromaniac, probably don't give them a ferro rod and send them to school. But most ferro rods, somebody looking at them, unless they're in the bushcraft E.D.C. world, they're not going to know what they are. They're just a rod of different elements, and you can get them all manner of sizes. Even make the little toggle ones that I like. I put one on my wife's hiking pack, on my miniature baby bug out bag or bailout bag. They just kind of look like a zipper pull or something like that. You would never know that it was anything like that. But it's a ferrocerium rod, and you strike it with something hard, and it will make a spark to start a fire. You may want to consider having one of those. They're a good thing to have. They'll light even when they're wet. You get hundreds and hundreds of sparks off of one. And assuming your kid can handle it, I think being able to start a fire and build a fire is a manly skill that young men should have. A couple other things, if your kids are into doing stuff outside, outdoors, if they're outdoorsy type kids, or if they're involved in sports or anything like that. The small tubes of sunblock and bug repellent. Maybe it's time to stop supplying all that stuff for your kid and expect them to be responsible for it. Give them some more responsibility. A small thing of sunblock, a small thing of bug spray, depending on where you live. Maybe one or the other or both. Also, those cheap emergency ponchos, handy for a lot of uses, most notably for a poncho. And they cost $1 or $2. Get stuck out in the rain, you get stuck outside for whatever reason, a downpour, you throw it on, much better off. You want to lay on the ground or lay stuff on the ground, stuff like that, you just lay it out. Again, they're $1 or $2. If you use it or they use it, just replace it. It's $1 or $2. Along those lines, those Mylar space blankets, also cheap, and they actually do work. So if you live in a colder climate where your kid might get stuck outside for whatever reason, they actually do work. They're pretty cool. I have used them, again, in the wilderness. It was quite a bit colder than I anticipated. They do work. They do work quite well, and they are very lightweight. Again, that front pouch of a book bag or something like that, they're not going to notice the extra weight or anything like that, I don't think. The next things I'm going to talk about a little bit more somber. Things have changed quite a bit since I was in school. And I'm not that old, guys, but we had a rifle team. We had a shooting team in school. In grade schools, we would walk down the halls with weapons with a bunch of other kids in the hallway. Me and my best friend would go deer hunting behind the school because we were poor and it was one of the few places with public land. Walk through town with a weapon and we would go deer hunting behind the school. Like the soccer field, but like there was quite a bit of land owned by the school that was public land. Just hard to come by when you're a poor kid in the South, and we would hunt deer back there and shoot deer back there. This is when we were too young to have a car. Anyway, we had guns at school, in school, around school, and we fought all the time. I wasn't a Christian growing up, and I fought a lot. I fought sometimes just because I like to fight, and that's not good and you shouldn't be that way, but me or anybody else ever had the thought to use a gun on another kid because we hunted, we used guns, we knew what they were, we knew what they did, and that's not what we wanted to do. Even if we had a pocket knife in our pocket, we didn't use it on another kid, we just fought. We got a little bloody, we got a little beat up. Anyway, I digress. It's a far different time now, and I realize that. At least I think I realize that. So the next things I'm going to talk about are a little bit more macabre, but I think it would be naive for me not to talk about them. How about a good tourniquet? You know, a good thing to have for you to have for if you're a young man or for you to have if you're a parent. But sadly, school shootings are a thing nowadays. If your kid gets a cut or something like that, if they want to have a couple Band-Aids, that's fine. But if they need a Band-Aid, they can probably go to the school nurse. If they need a tourniquet, they need one right now. Best to have one on you, especially if you're in a situation where a lot of people need tourniquets. It's best to have one or two. Now, the go-to military and stuff standard is a cat tourniquet. If you're in high school, that's probably fine. But a rat tourniquet will work on smaller people and dogs. You may want to look into those and go that route, or a SWAT T. I don't know that they've ever heard of me, but Refuge Medical, Bear Independent, they make really good medical kits if you want your kid to carry like a full-on medical kit. But a tourniquet is a good thing to have. If it's something you don't know how to do as a parent, I recommend you learn how to do it and do it with your kid. It's probably something they'll think is pretty cool. Bring them on, let them crank it down on you until your blood stops pumping in that, appendage. They'll probably think that's pretty cool, and you'll learn something and they'll learn something. But a tourniquet, they don't weigh a ton, so put it in that front pouch, and hopefully they never ever need it, or nobody they know ever needs it. But a good thing to have. Now, there's all kinds of tactical pens and stuff like that. Tactical pens with the little knurled ends and all kinds of things on there. But you're probably not getting away with that in school. Just a good, solid metal pen. Even me, I got one when I worked at LAPD. Just a good, solid metal. Mine was a zebra pen. I carried it for years and years and years. Now I just carry a Sharpie because the number one thing I write on is myself. But a good metal pen. And smart enough to know what good uses a metal pen can have. This is something that is rather expensive. It's a Kevlar panel of whatever size you want to put in the backpack. I don't know if that's something you want to consider, but a way to do that on the cheap is, let's say, an old Kevlar soft armor vest from police, or an old flak jacket that you can buy on eBay, and just take the panel out and fit that in the back of a backpack. And hopefully you really never need that. If you're not, let's say, a kid in school and you're interested in the improvised weapons, we did a whole episode on improvised weapons. So if you are in a non-permissive environment and you need a weapon, that's probably the episode to go listen to. And if your kid is homeschooled or private schooled, if they allow it, or just when you go to pick them up and they hop in the truck, you're going to do something outside after school. My favorite places to be when I was a kid was a lot of times on a riverbank or in the woods or in the swamp or something like that. If you're going to do something outside and you think they're ready, maybe it's time for a knife and showing them how to use it properly. My number one recommendation for anybody to get into E.D.C. or for a good carry knife is a Buck 110 Slim. If you want to carry it in a belt pouch, this traditional 110 will be a good heirloom quality knife. If you want something more modern and practical with a pocket clip, the Buck 110, and that'd be my number one recommendation for a young man as well. They also make the 112. In some places you can't carry a knife blade over a certain length. A lot of times it's 3 inches. I do believe the Buck 112 is a smaller blade. and is legal in those places, but same basic design and everything else. There's a lot of other good knives out there. We could do a whole episode on that. Maybe we will. We've definitely done entire episodes on knives. Anyway, I still have my first pocket knife that my grandma got for me, and we were pretty poor, so it is not a buck. It is a Pakistani knockoff. In fact, you can barely read the word Pakistan on there because of how much it's been used and loved. I still have it, and when I started this podcast, I started thinking about it, and it was literally right behind me within arm's reach. My grandmother has since passed on, and I can't even recall how old I was when I got this knife, 6 or 7 probably, and it's well used and well worn. I still keep it sharp as a cheap Pakistani knockoff knife can be. It is a little small locking knife. It kind of looks like a miniature version of a Buck 110. It's a very classic design. That is one thing, if you're going to get yourself or your young man in your life a knife, consider making it a locking knife. I know the old-timer knives, the little pen knives that you put in your pocket, are kind of classic, but usually they don't lock, and that can cause injuries. I speak from first-hand experience. And getting stitches, because I was using one to push down on something and I didn't realize it didn't lock, and it folded on my fingers. So if you can, and you probably can because there's a lot of designs today, getting a good locking knife might be the way to go. I think that'll pretty much be it for this. I'll start wrapping it up and going into the tactical tips of the day. Tactical tip of the day, we touched on a flashlight, something I just used when I took the dog out for a walk. Even though I had my nicer E.D.C light, I use these all the time. Walmart in the camping section, they usually have these cheap headlamps. They're literally, I think, $1. And I buy a bunch of them at a time. I use them until they get worn out or I forget and leave one on and they go dead. They're a little $1 LED headlamp. They're great for using as what they are, a headlamp. They're also great and they're cheap enough you can just turn one on and use it as kind of like a small floodlight if you're reading at night or something like that. Good thing for your kid to have in their pack. Good thing for you to have in the glove box, in your center console, by the bed. Just so cheap and easy. A lot of times, if you don't know, I live off grid. They're nice and handy for dealing with a generator and things like that at night, or just being outside at night. Even if I have a better flashlight, I want my hands free and I'm doing a task that's pretty close in front of me. Those small cheap headlamps, again, they're $1. The other one, in contrast to that one, I don't have any first-hand experience with, but you might want to think about this. Not super applicable to me, because again, I usually carry a gun and a knife, so if I want to break glass, I'm just going to break glass. They make these glass breaking bracelets that I've seen, never used, but it's basically shot cord with a tungsten bead on there. And the way I've seen it is you hold it in your 2 fingers, like your thumb and your pointer finger, and you pull it back with the other hand and let it go and it snaps and breaks glass. For that school shooting scenario, for your kid getting kidnapped or things we don't want to think about, there may come a time where escape is important. And again, know your kid. If they're prone to vandalism, don't get them this. But those glass breaking bracelets, they may come in handy. They're not prohibitively expensive. Anyway, consider those your tactical tip of the day, hopefully, which will bring us to the tactical verse of the day. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. And parents, the most important thing your kids need, they're probably not getting in school, and that's to know God and have a relationship with God. So whatever else you teach them, or don't teach them, make sure you're teaching them about God and the Word of God. Whatever skills you may or may not need in life, whatever subjects you may or may not need moving forward in life, you certainly need God. It's only by His grace that you receive every breath. And all that you have and everything that you have is a gift from God. Remember that. Remember that your kids are a gift from God. And we are all servants to Him. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.